They have seated you beside me, the Duke of Prescott said without turning his head, as a dare. I trust you know it. The wager is whether you can survive the soup course without weeping. How generous of them, the young woman on his left replied, shaking out her napkin. I had meant to weep between the fish and the game, but I shall hold it for the pudding now, out of spite. Thank you for the warning, your grace. Marcus Thorne, Duke of Prescott, turned his head. He had not intended to. He had spoken to be rid of her, as he was rid of everyone, the whole long table of them, the county's finest, gathered at Lady Harborough's endless dinner, every one of whom found him magnificent and terrifying and impossible to speak to, which suited him precisely. Prescott had a reputation and had built it deliberately. The men called him the coldest man in 3 counties. The mothers warned their daughters. The daughters, dared by one another, sometimes attempted the summit that was his conversation and slid back down white and trembling within the minute. He had watched, at the far end of the drawing-room before dinner, the little conspiracy form, the huddle of laughing young ladies, the glances toward him, the pushing forward of one of their number, this one, in the pale green gown, plainly the poorest of them and therefore the most expendable. As a jest, sit beside the terrible Duke of Prescott. See how long you last. He had meant to make it very short indeed. He had not expected her to answer him like that. You are not weeping, he observed. I am waiting for the pudding, she said. I told you. Do try to keep up, your grace. We have a great many courses yet, and it will go hard for us both if you cannot follow a conversation past its opening line. She tasted the soup and made a small approving sound. The soup, at least, is not a dare. The soup is excellent. Whatever else may be said of Lady Harborough's table, her cook does not require rescuing. Marcus set down his own spoon. What is your name? Miss Beatrice Sinclair, she said. My father was a naval officer of good family and poor fortune, which is a polite way of saying that I am here on sufferance, in a made-over gown, as the amusement of my betters. You need not pretend not to have noticed the gown. Everyone else has noticed the gown. It is a very hard-working gown, and I am fond of it, and I would thank you not to speak ill of it, though I dare say you were about to. I was not, Marcus said, about to speak ill of your gown. Then you are the first person tonight who has not, said Miss Sinclair, and I withdraw my low expectations of you accordingly. Provisionally. Marcus Thorne looked at her for rather longer than was polite. She was not beautiful in the way the county measured beauty. She had a decided chin and a mouth that plainly could not be governed and a pair of very direct hazel eyes. But there was a quickness to her face, a lit and dancing intelligence, that made the beauties on either side of her look, suddenly, like well-painted furniture, and she was not afraid of him. He had spent a decade making himself into a man that people feared, because fear kept them at a distance, and distance kept them from the truth, which was that he had loved once, foolishly, and been made a public fool of by a woman who had wanted his name and laughed at his heart, and had resolved never again to give any living soul the means to do it twice. Fear was armor, he wore it well, and this small poor naval officer's daughter in her hard-working gown had looked straight through it in the space of a soup course and declined, entirely, to be afraid. You know, Marcus said slowly, that everyone at this table is watching you. Of course they are, Beatrice said. They wagered on me. I imagine there is money changing hands under the cloth as we speak. Mr. Fanshawe over there had 2 guineas that I would flee before the fish. He is looking quite sour, so I take it he has lost them, and I am glad of it, because he trod on my hem in the drawing-room and did not beg my pardon. She glanced up at Marcus with sudden frank curiosity. The question that interests me, your grace, is why you are helping me win. You told me about the wager. You did not have to. A truly terrible man would have let me blunder in and be crushed. So either you are not as terrible as advertised, or you have some deeper cruelty in mind that I have not yet worked out. Which is it? I do like to know where I stand. Marcus opened his mouth and found, to his considerable astonishment, that he did not have an answer ready. I told you about the wager, he said at last, because I dislike cruelty done for sport, even when I am the instrument of it. Especially then. Beatrice studied him. She said, is a much better answer than I expected. I shall have to revise my opinion upward again. At this rate, your grace, you will be almost tolerable by the game course, And Marcus Thorne, the coldest man in 3 counties, laughed. It was not a small laugh, politely smothered. It came up out of him whole and startled and entirely genuine, loud enough that the conversation nearest them stopped dead, loud enough that heads turned all down the long table, loud enough that Lady Harborough at its head set down her fork and stared. No one within living memory had heard the Duke of Prescott laugh. The young ladies who had dared Beatrice Sinclair into her seat looked at one another in confusion. The wager, it was slowly dawning upon them, had gone very strangely wrong. Beatrice, for her part, looked exceedingly pleased with herself. There, she said. Now they will all lose their money, because no one bet on that. He talked with her through the whole of that dinner. He, who spoke to no one, spoke to Beatrice Sinclair through the fish and the game, and the removes and the pudding she had promised to weep into and did not, and he found each course too short and the whole evening far too brief. She had opinions on everything and apologized for none of them. She told him the naval history of half his own coastline, having had it from her father, and corrected him twice, and was right both times and did not pretend she was not. She mocked, gently and without malice, the pretensions of the very table that had meant to mock her. And when Marcus said something dry and cutting, she did not flinch from it as the others did. She caught it and turned it and sent it back sharper, so that for the first time in a decade Marcus Thorne had to reach for his wit rather than merely wield it. And the reaching woke something in him he had thought long dead. "You are not," he told her, somewhere around the pudding, "what I was led to expect." "No," Beatrice agreed. "I am a great disappointment to everyone. My aunt despairs of me. She says a poor girl with no fortune must at least be agreeable, and I am not agreeable, I am only honest, which she assures me is a great deal worse and will see me a spinster." She ate her pudding with evident enjoyment. "But I have decided I would rather be an honest spinster than an agreeable liar, and there is an end of it. I cannot fawn. I have tried. It comes out wrong. I open my mouth to flatter a man and the truth falls out instead, and then everyone is offended, and I am uninvited to the next thing." She glanced sidelong at him. "You will notice I have not flattered you once tonight." "I have noticed," Marcus said. "Are you offended?" "No," he said. "I am." He stopped, hunting for the word, and found it, and gave it to her plainly, because she had given him nothing but plain truth all evening, and he found he could not do less. "I am grateful. Miss Sinclair, do you know how long it has been since anyone told me a true thing? Every soul I meet flatters me or fears me, and the fawning and the fear amount to the same lie, that I am something other than a man. You have called me tolerable and provisional and almost bearable all in one dinner, and every word of it has been the first honest thing said to me in 10 years. You cannot know what that is worth. You cannot possibly know." Beatrice had gone still. The lit mischief in her face had softened into something more careful. "You must have been very lonely," she said quietly, "to find plain rudeness so precious." Marcus said, I have been exactly that." For a moment neither of them spoke, and the great foolish table clattered on around them oblivious. The ladies withdrew. The gentlemen sat over their wine, and when at last the company reassembled in the drawing-room, the young ladies who had launched their dare gathered again in their corner to crow over Beatrice, expecting to find her routed at last, cast off by the terrible Duke the moment dinner released him, for surely he had only been toying with her. Surely a naval nobody in a made-over gown could not have held the coldest man in 3 counties for the space of a single evening. They found, instead, the Duke of Prescott crossing the drawing-room to her. He crossed it in front of all of them, past the great and the fashionable, past the mothers and their well-dowered daughters, and he did not stop until he stood before Beatrice Sinclair in her hard-working pale green gown, and the whole room fell silent to watch, because the Duke of Prescott did not cross drawing-rooms for anyone. "Miss Sinclair," Marcus said, and pitched his voice to carry, so that every person who had wagered against her should hear it. "You were seated beside me tonight as a jest, by people who thought you beneath their sport. I have dined at the finest tables in the kingdom and been bored at every one of them for 10 years. You are the first honest voice I have heard in a decade, and the only conversation in this house worth the having. If these ladies wagered on how long you would last beside me, I am pleased to inform them that they have lost their money entirely, because I do not intend to leave your side for the rest of the evening, nor, if you will permit it, for a great many evenings after." A gasp went round the room. The young ladies in the corner had gone the colour of their own ribbons. Beatrice looked up at him, and for once, for the first time all night, she seemed almost lost for a reply. "Your Grace," she managed, "you are aware that I have no fortune, no connections, and a gown that has been made over 3 times?" "I am aware," Marcus said, "that you told a duke to keep up before you had finished your soup, that you corrected my naval history and were right, and that you would rather be an honest spinster than an agreeable liar. I have a very great fortune, Miss Sinclair. What I have never once been able to buy with it is a single person who would tell me the truth to my face. You have done it freely, for the price of a dinner. I find I cannot let you leave this house without asking leave to call upon you, properly and often, and with entirely honourable intentions, which I will state as plainly as you have taught me to state everything. I mean to court you, if you will have it, and I do not much care who hears me say so. You," Beatrice said unsteadily, "are meant to be the coldest man in 3 counties." "I was," Marcus agreed. "It appears I have been thoroughly outmatched by a naval officer's daughter in a green gown over soup. It is the most complete defeat of my life, and I have never been so glad to lose anything." He offered her his arm, there before the whole staring room. "Will you take a turn with me, Miss Sinclair? I should like to hear the rest of your opinions. I find I have a great many years of honesty to make up." She looked at his offered arm. She looked at the young ladies in the corner, who had dared her into this seat expecting to see her broken, and who now watched aghast as the impossible summit of the Duke of Prescott bent itself entirely to her. And Beatrice Sinclair, who could not fawn and would not lie, and had never in her life said the agreeable thing, laid her hand upon the Duke's arm and gave him the plainest truth of all. "Yes," she said, "though I warn you, your Grace, I shall go on correcting you. It is incurable." "I am counting on it," Marcus said. He did call. He called through the whole of that spring, and the county, which had wagered against her, revised itself entirely as counties do, and Beatrice went on correcting him, and never once fawned, and never learned to, and Marcus Thorne loved her the more for every honest word. When he married her in the autumn, the young ladies who had launched the Dare came to the wedding and curtsied to the new Duchess of Prescott in her hard-working family, and Beatrice greeted every one of them with a graciousness so genuine it left them nothing to say. For the Duke had built himself a fortress of fear and lived cold inside it for 10 long years, and it had taken a poor girl's honesty over a bowl of soup to walk straight through the wall as though it had never been there at all. He had dared her, in his way, to weep. She had dared him, without meaning to feel he counted it ever after the best lost wager of his life.